The Nazis were looking for a woman. They knew she was working behind enemy lines in occupied France. They knew she was helping the French resistance and assisting Allied airmen. And they knew she was dangerous. But the Germans believed they had one advantage. The woman they were hunting had an artificial leg. Her name was Virginia Hall. Virginia was born in Baltimore, Maryland. In 1906, she grew up in a wealthy family. But she dreamed of seeing the world and serving her country. She studied at Radcliffe College and Barnard College, then continued her education in Europe. She learned languages and eventually worked at American diplomatic posts in Warsaw, Venice, and Tallinn. Her dream was to become a diplomat. Then, in 1933, her life changed forever. While hunting in Turkey, Virginia accidentally shot herself in the left leg. The wound became infected, and doctors were forced to amputate the lower part of her leg. She received a prosthetic leg and gave it a nickname, Cuthbert. Virginia tried to continue her diplomatic career, but the American diplomatic service would not accept someone with an artificial limb. Her dream seemed to be over, but Virginia refused to give up. When World War II reached France, she joined the French ambulance service and helped during the fighting. Then she discovered another way to fight. Britain had created a secret organization called the Special Operations Executive, or SOE. Its agents worked behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence, organizing resistance fighters, delivering supplies, and helping Allied personnel escape. Virginia joined the SOE in 1941. After training, she was sent into occupied France. Her cover was that of an American journalist working for the New York Post, but she wasn't really there to write stories. She had a secret mission. She had to build a resistance network inside Nazi-occupied France. She would need to find people she could trust, establish safe houses, organize communications, and help the Allies. Virginia Hall was entering a world where one mistake could mean death, and soon the Nazis would begin searching for her. Virginia Hall arrived in occupied France in 1941 under the cover of an American journalist, but behind that identity was a secret agent. Her mission was extremely dangerous. She had to build a network of French resistance fighters who could gather information, sabotage German operations, and help Allied personnel escape. Virginia quickly proved that she was exceptionally good at the job. She recruited local contacts, arranged safe houses, organized couriers, and established secret communication channels. She also helped Allied agents move through France without being detected. Her prosthetic leg made the work even harder. Every journey through the countryside was painful. She had to walk long distances, cross difficult terrain, and constantly remain alert for German patrols. Yet she refused to let her disability become a weakness. Instead, she turned it into part of her disguise. The Germans were searching for a mysterious female agent, but they had no idea that the woman they were hunting was living right under their noses. Virginia's network grew. She helped organize resistance groups and passed valuable intelligence to the Allies. She also helped coordinate supply drops, bringing weapons, radios, money, and other equipment to French resistance fighters. But the Germans were becoming increasingly suspicious. Their agents began searching for the source of the resistance activity. Virginia knew that her network was becoming too dangerous to remain in one place. Then, disaster struck. The Germans began closing in. Virginia had to escape France before she and her entire network were captured. But escaping occupied France was almost impossible. The borders were heavily guarded. Roads were watched. Trains were monitored. German soldiers searched travelers and questioned anyone who looked suspicious. And Virginia had one major problem. Her artificial leg made running extremely difficult. Still, she began one of the most extraordinary escapes of her life. She crossed the Pyrenees on foot, moving through freezing mountain terrain while trying to avoid patrols. The journey was brutal. Every step with her prosthetic leg caused pain, and the mountains offered almost no protection from the cold. But Virginia kept moving. Eventually, she reached Spain. She was safe, for the moment. But she wasn't finished. The Allies still needed her. And soon Virginia Hall would return to France under an even more dangerous mission. Virginia Hall had escaped France, but she refused to stay away. In 1944, the Allies were preparing for the liberation of Europe. and they needed people who could work behind enemy lines. Virginia was sent back to France. This time, her mission was even more dangerous. She joined the American Intelligence Service and returned under a new identity. Her appearance was carefully changed. She dressed like an ordinary Frenchwoman and moved through villages where German soldiers were everywhere. But behind the disguise was one of the most wanted Allied agents in Europe. Virginia began rebuilding her resistance network. She contacted local fighters, gathered intelligence, and helped coordinate attacks against German forces. Her radio became one of her most important weapons. From hidden locations, she transmitted information to Allied commanders about German troops, supply routes, and military movements. Every transmission was dangerous. German radio detection teams were hunting for Allied signals, and staying on the air for too long could reveal her location. So Virginia had to move constantly. She changed safe houses, changed locations, and never stayed anywhere longer than necessary. Meanwhile, the Allied advance was getting closer. Resistance fighters began attacking German communications and transportation lines. Bridges were sabotaged. Railways were disrupted. German convoys were ambushed. And Virginia helped coordinate many of these operations from behind enemy lines. But the danger had not disappeared. German troops were still searching for resistance leaders. One mistake could mean capture or death. Virginia knew this better than anyone. Yet she continued working. Her intelligence helped the Allies understand what was happening behind German lines, while her resistance contacts helped disrupt German operations. Then, in August 1944, Allied forces pushed deeper into France. The German occupation was beginning to collapse. The woman who had once escaped across the Pyrenees was now helping the Allies advance through the country she had risked everything to protect. And for Virginia Hall, war was still not over. Her greatest challenge was still ahead. By the summer of 1944, Germany's control over France was beginning to collapse. But for Virginia Hall, the danger was becoming greater than ever. German forces were retreating, yet they were still determined to destroy the resistance. Virginia continued moving between safe houses, forests, and villages, helping organize resistance fighters and passing intelligence to the Allies. She was no longer simply gathering information. She was helping prepare the resistance for the final stages of the war. Her contacts were given weapons and supplies dropped by Allied aircraft. Resistance fighters were trained to attack German communications, disrupt transportation, and strike at important targets. Virginia helped coordinate these operations while avoiding German patrols, but every operation carried a terrible risk. If the Germans captured one resistance fighter, they could force him to reveal the names of others. That meant Virginia could never completely trust that a safe house was actually safe. She changed locations frequently and used secret methods to communicate with her contacts. Meanwhile, Allied troops were advancing across France. The resistance was becoming bolder. German soldiers were finding it harder to move supplies and communicate with their commanders. Railway lines were sabotaged. Roads were blocked. German units were ambushed. The network Virginia had helped build was now playing an important role in the Allied advance. Then came the liberation. As Allied forces moved into French towns, crowds filled the streets. French flags appeared everywhere. After years of occupation, people could finally see the end of the war approaching. But Virginia did not celebrate for long. She knew that intelligence work was still necessary. Germany had not yet surrendered. The war continued farther east, and Virginia had already proven that she could operate behind enemy lines under extreme pressure. Her courage and intelligence had made her one of the most valuable agents in the Allied intelligence network. But the extraordinary part of her story was still not finished. After everything she had endured, Virginia Hall would eventually receive recognition for her service, and the woman who had once been dismissed because of her artificial leg would become one of the most remarkable spies of the Second World War. When the war in Europe finally came to an end, Virginia Hall had survived something that few people could have imagined. She had worked behind enemy lines, built resistance networks, escaped across the Pyrenees, returned to occupied France, and continued operating while German forces hunted her. But Virginia did not consider herself a hero. She simply believed that the mission mattered more than her own safety. After the war, she continued working for American intelligence. Her experience made her extremely valuable, especially as the world entered a new era of international tension. For years, she remained involved in intelligence work, operating quietly and avoiding public attention. The woman who had once been one of the most wanted Allied agents was now living a much more private life. But eventually, her extraordinary service became impossible to hide. Virginia Hall received some of the highest honors given to intelligence officers. The United States awarded her the Distinguished Service Cross, one of its nation's highest military decorations. Britain also recognized her contribution. France honored her for the role she had played in the resistance. Yet, despite these honors, Virginia remained remarkably private. She rarely spoke about her achievements. She had spent much of her life working in the shadows, and that was exactly where she seemed most comfortable. Her story is remarkable for another reason. At a time when many people believed a person with a prosthetic leg could not perform dangerous field work, Virginia proved them wrong. Her artificial leg did not stop her from becoming a spy. It did not stop her from crossing mountains. It did not stop her from returning to occupied France. And it certainly did not stop her from helping defeat Nazi Germany. Virginia Hall died in 1982. By then, the world had changed dramatically. But the story of the woman who walked into occupied France with a prosthetic leg and became one of the Allies' most effective secret agents remained. She was not famous because she wanted fame. She became famous because, when history demanded courage, she answered the call. And sometimes, the most extraordinary heroes are the ones who never asked to be remembered.